So, Pavel, Panattoni Europe is obviously quite well known for its greenfield developments all over Europe, but you're starting to work, I think, as well on brownfields, which has become a hot issue, I think, in the industrial market overall. How important is that for you for your future growth here?
To be honest, it's a theme for us in US as well. For many years we've been focusing on brownfields in US and Canada. And I think as we mature with the market in Central Europe as well, we follow German market, and we need to focus on the brownfields, because to use more greenfield sites, it's very difficult. It's difficult to get the permits. We understand also our responsibility for keeping the environment a bit green, not only just flooded with the concrete. And we need to look into the opportunities which are there, sitting for years, really available, and no one just really tried and put some effort into finding the way how to make them alive again.
So you're looking at opportunities within the cities. I imagine that has to do with the boom in e-commerce and the last mile delivery to retail clients.
To be honest, it's not that much linked. We have a lot of locations which are remote, but we believe that those locations which are 10, 15, 20 hectares plus give great opportunity to connect to the infrastructure, because historically all these brownfields were connected. You can really utilize the space, because mainly the shape of the sites was really for industrial use, so they are not funky shaped, so you can really utilize the space very efficiently, and you don't need to really cover too much space, and you are really efficient on the site. And as well, there's a tradition. And a lot of those brownfields were manufacturing, glass production, it was trolley bus production, you name it. And in the area, there was some reason why these companies came, and the people are still there, maybe second, third generation, but still there's a industrial tradition. And this is very important to our customers, to get really to the locations where you've got the labor available, not cheap labor, but labor which knows how to work in the industry.
And you don't have to worry about busing them to the site, since there's already trams, buses, and metros going there anywhere, aren't they?
Yes, very true. So, and you can also organize very efficient transport to those locations. But we need to really choose carefully, because some of the brownfields are really inner city, which is difficult to redevelop, and they are not even good for the e-commerce because of the traffic which e-commerce generates. So it's really preparing a lot of sites, and then you really need to dig deep to find what you really can do on the site and to have the right product for the site.
You brought up Germany and laws about environmental protection. Do the laws that are in place right now in the Czech Republic, do they make sense for developers and for the growth of the economy in a sustainable way? Do they make sense in your opinion?
Very interesting question, because we were now taking part in Brownfield conference, and we were discussing with the guys from the Ministry of Environment, of Agriculture, that we should not cover more area. We should not go to the open landscape, and we should concentrate and try to build up as much as possible in the existing areas, in the cities, at the airports, and so on, and utilize the space which is already defined by the boundaries of the city. And contradictory, we have the limits in most of the master plans that we need to keep 20, 25, 30, up to 40% of our park green, which doesn't make sense. It really contradicts that we should build as condensed places as possible next to the city, in the city, and not expand to the landscape. But by this, when I compare, when you look at the market in Czech, it's 7 million square meters. By that, we needed to consume the whole market 4 million square meters of land which could be kept as agriculture. But instead of that, we are having green parts in the park, which doesn't generate anything. So instead of focusing on how can we develop more condensed developments on the site we have, we rather expand it and consume more agricultural land. So I think that's something where we need to look at Western countries, how they do it, why they do it, understand it. Of course, it has to come also with the protection of water and so on. We need to retain the water, get it into the ground, and so on. That's fine. We can absorb those requirements, but to consume more green areas because we want to have some green in the parks, that doesn't make sense.
there's still a lot of people in the general public, I think, who when they think of developers, they don't really think of companies that are really caring too much about environmental protection. But it's actually a lot more than just ticking some boxes and just public relations, isn't it, for you?
It's the whole theme of sustainability, and it's not important only for us but also for our customers, for our investors. And I was surprised how many customers are chasing us. Can we get the certification or the certificate put on our building? We want to show that we are environmentally friendly, we are in sustainable building, we really took care of the construction process, of our employees, how they commute to work, and that the building is sustainable. I was really surprised, and there are many companies chasing us. Can we get it on our building? Are you already finished with the certification? So that's one thing, and also the investors see that these buildings, they might get lower taxation in the long run. So it's all connected also with the economy. So it makes sense, and we believe that sustainability will be theme for many years to come.
Speaking of taxation, you have some rather radical ideas for what you think should be done in the Czech Republic in terms of the tax regime, don't you?
Yes. I think I will be the first right-wing guy which will say raise the taxes. but I think it's for the good. Because when you look in Czech, we've got 20% corporate tax, which is very low. We are happy that it's low. But it all goes to the state budget. It goes up to the government, and then it's redistributed, which is taking away the money from the direct influence of the people which are living in the areas where there's industry, where there's retail, and where the money are generated. Because those people in those areas have to take also the hits and discomfort because of the zones which are being built and which are being operated there. And in Germany, we don't have to go to US. We can look at Germany. And when you look at Germany, they have 30%, up to 30% taxation, corporate tax. But up to half of that can stay in the local budget. And the city really defines whether they will collect 5 to 15 or 7 to 15%.
That gives cities an incentive to discuss the conditions and for you to come into the city, because it means that they get something out of it besides just another shed and more concrete and more workers coming into town.
Yeah. Imagine that there's coming production company next to the small town which will generate profit of 5 million euros per annum. If 15% stays in the city, they can afford better school, better nursing, maybe house for pensioners, and they can fund it for many years to come, because those production companies are not staying for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. They are looking at the horizon of 15, 20 years. And this is a benefit for the people, and to welcome also, not because of only the jobs and investment, but because the company from the taxes will support the local community. And I think that's very important.
Well, I don't hear that being talked a lot about yet, but perhaps it'll begin in the near future. So thanks very much, Pavel.
Thank you, Robert.
Ondřej, you're CFO at Panattoni Europe here in the Czech Republic. You're working with a lot of different investors for a really pretty large expansion of the company. How is that working? How are you going about financing all these different developments with such a wide range of investors?
Well, it depends basically on the type of investor. We have some multinational investors who actually don't use that. They use full equity, or basically they finance themselves basically on the portfolio level. And basically it's easy. Basically, we don't really care that much about the bank financing. Then we have local investors who are able to basically do it themselves, like Accolades, and they basically typically source the Czech banks and basically provide the bank financing. And then we have the last group of the investors who don't have the full infrastructure. They are typically basically London-based investors, and that's where basically we provide the bank financing. And for the construction and development loans, we typically source the Czech banks because they know the market the best. And basically, so we have long-term cooperation with Unicredit, Česká spořitelná societe. And then basically, if we have investment loan, then for the investment loan, basically we compare basically the Czech market with the German market and international market. Because on the investment loan, basically international banks are more capable to provide basically the loans on better terms, and it typically depends on what level of leverage we are asking for. So
That's the other question. We're in an era of rather low leverage compared to what people got used to. What is it like with the different investors that you're working on in the different projects?
it depends basically. What we have really a wide range of investors. So we have basically flippers who are most aggressive and they seek basically the highest leverage. So they would typically aim at having 70-80% leverage. And then basically we have typical investor, long term basically is now looking at basically 40 to 50% leverage. And then we have basically the core investors who actually don't use that, basically who are spending the equity. So.
And finally, the obvious question that I almost always ask banker these days, but it looks like there is a slow upwards rise on interest rates in the Czech Republic, possibly coming down from the ECB as well. There's signs the U.S. Treasury is moving that way as well, obviously. Is that a danger for your business, or does it at this point not really make any difference because they're coming from such a low rate?
At the moment, basically, it definitely is not a danger, and basically, we don't really see that coming, as basically, the interest rates are rising on the Czech loans, basically in Czech crowns, based on PRIBOR. But basically, as we are using euro, the Euribor is still pretty stable. Basically, Euribor is still at minus 30 basis points, and even basically, if you look at the swaps, basically there is 3-year swap, 5-year swap, they are still basically below 100 basis points. So basically, even basically, the market thinks basically that the long-term interest rates are basically close to zero.
And what's your perception with the banks? Are they in a really competitive environment? Are they inviting you out to lunch, or are you getting in a line to get loans from the banks?
We are in a very good position at the moment. It's basically, if you are in the market basically for us, basically 20 years, basically you feel basically what's the difference? Basically, yeah, exactly as you were saying. Basically, there are periods when you are trying to ask the banker for lunch and it's difficult. Now it's basically vice versa. So basically now we have very easy access to bank financing, especially as basically there were a couple of crucial moments basically on the Czech market for the bank financing of industrial. A couple of the parties basically repaid the loans, like P3. Basically, they repaid the loans and paid them basically they took the loans from abroad. And then basically the players like CPI basically introduced the bonds. So basically the bankers suddenly have quite a lot of liquidity to lend.
Happy days.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks very much, Andre.
Yeah, thank you.